less than a year, our country has had 3 mass shootings that have taken the lives of hundreds of innocent victims, and there seems to be no end in sight. As the American people are grappling to understand what could prompt someone to open fire on their own citizens, the left has already begun to politicize the newest tragedy to sway public opinion their way. The liberal media pundits and politicians have already jumped on their soapbox demanding stricter gun laws by tugging at the heartstrings of grief-stricken families affected by the Parkland shooting. However, while many people have fallen for these manipulative tactics, one shooting victim didn't and called out the lying reporter live on the air, much to the dismay of all gun grabbers across the country. Anytime there is a tragedy that occurs, our nation, the mainstream media in concert with top liberal politicians, immediately begin to look for new ways to pass stricter laws that would infringe on our rights. That tactic has been seen numerous times over the last several years, especially in gun-related incidents, as these power-hungry leftists continue to try and disarm the American people in the name of security. And, now another mass shooter, Nicholas Cruz, has just struck at a Florida high school, callously murdering 17 innocent lives and injuring at least 20 others. The calls for more gun control have increased. The talking heads on CNN are making sure to do their part to incite more fear, as seen in a recent interview with victims of the shooting on national television. The CNN reporter began to interview David Hogg, a 17-year-old senior at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where she was trying to bait the victim into saying we needed more gun control. However, Hogg was not biting and instead chastised the reporter, saying that something needed to be done to make schools safer in America, but never called for more gun control. Here is more from the New York Times, where Hogg describes the terrifying moments of the shooting and calls for adults to start acting like adults again. David Hogg stood in the Florida sun on Thursday, not far from his now shuttered school, and described the events of the day before. Mr. Hogg, 17, a lanky senior at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School and the student news director there, was in his environmental science class when a single shot rang out, echoing down the hallways. His teacher pulled the door shut, but soon the fire alarm began to blare. Then, he said, came the sound of thousands of student footsteps, and Mr. Hogg and his classmates raced out the door, joining a giant wave of teenagers. There was a tsunami of people running in one specific direction away from something, he said, and that's what we were doing. It was almost like there was a shark coming along and we were a school of fish. And we were running from that armed man. A janitor appeared, he said, and began to wave. Stop, stop, he said, go over here. Then the school chef opened a door to her office and hurried the teenagers in. First 10, then 20, then some 30 or 40 students crowded into the office. They shut off the lights. And then students turned to their phones and began the horrifying experience of watching a school shooting unfold at their own school, through the news apps on their phones, on a national scale. I'm not surprised at all, he said of the shooting. And that's just sad. The fact that a student is not surprised that there was another mass shooting, but this time it was at his school, says so much about the current state that our country is in, and how much has to be done. The violence must stop, he said, issuing a call to pressure lawmakers to act to make schools safer. We need to do something. We need to get out there and be politically active. Congress needs to get over their political bias with each other and work toward saving children's lives. In an interview with CNN earlier on Thursday, Mr. Hogg expressed his frustration with politicians in simpler terms. We're children, he said. You guys are the adults. It is clear that Hogg was not calling for more gun control, but for the adults in this country to put political differences aside and protect the youth. The reason that we see mass shooting on school campuses is simple. It is a gun-free zone, and there are not enough people there to protect our young students from harm. Instead of liberal lawmakers fighting to keep dreamers and illegals, immigrants here in our country, why don't they fund our veterans to patrol our schools to keep them safe? But that would go against their narrative and desire to control the population, and they can't let that happen. Our children deserve to feel safe in school, and the only way that will happen is when these schools are adequately equipped with ways to protect these innocent lives. It is time that politicians and the mainstream media stop with the same tired gun control argument and look for better ways to keep our schools safe, and the only way that will occur is when we demand it. From the web powered by Zergnet, awkward Olympics wardrobe malfunctions. You can't unsee the real reason you don't hear about Leanne Rimes anymore. This figure skating move was too provocative for the Olympics. The truth about Chip Gaines. Here's what you didn't know about Megyn Kelly. Olympic figure skater handles wardrobe malfunction perfectly.